Remember when the Jazz blew a 16-point fourth quarter lead to the Warriors? I was screaming at a run of threes by Golden State to dismantle Utah's drop coverage. And with this Jazz team, man, I tell you what, it's time for change because this Jazz squad has an inflexible scheme solely reliant on Rudy Gobert to get stops on defense. They have a sorry perimeter defense that can't stop penetration, so they really have no choice but to use drop coverage as a means of protecting the rim, even if it means allowing pull-ups. Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson, just like many others have throughout the season, attacked Utah's drop coverage with pull-up after pull-up. Utah's perimeter defenders don't stick to their opponent while fighting through screens, and the drop gives them space to launch. Gobert could pressure or switch instead of dropping into the paint, but the Jazz have no competent backline defenders who can offer rim protection when Gobert is pulled away from the paint. No one else can offer any resistance. But when the Jazz are on offense and a defense switches on pick and roll screens, the Jazz turn stagnant, in part due to Gobert's scoring limitations on offense. By playing with Draymond Green at the 5 and switching everything, the Warriors were able to force the Jazz into inefficient isolation plays with Donovan Mitchell badly struggling in that game. Gobert sets 43 picks per game, which is the most in the NBA according to Second Spectrum. And the Jazz do score with excellent efficiency, no matter what teams do, unless they switch, whether it's Mitchell or Conley handling the ball. That's because when the defense is dropping or pressuring, Gobert is an elite at-rim finisher on lobs and cuts, but when he needs to dribble at least once before shooting, that's when he struggles. Throughout his career, he makes under 50% of his shots since 2017 when he has to dribble at least once, which means on a switch, he's ineffective scoring inside even when he has good positioning, and his teammates know it. At one point in that game against Golden State, Gobert had sealed off Klay Thompson underneath the basket, but Mitchell stiffed him. They ice him out. Gobert takes one shot per game when he dribbles at least once, one of the lowest amounts in the entire league. By comparison, Embiid leads all centers with 11.9 per game. Robin Lopez takes 3.5 per game. Jared Allen takes 3.1. Mo Bamba takes 1.4. Hassan Whiteside, Gobert's own teammate, takes 1.2, even more than Gobert in just about half the minutes. All the Warriors really did to the Jazz is exactly what the Clippers did to them last postseason and what the Warriors did years ago, for that matter. The blueprint is simple. It's unchanged. A switch exposes their weaknesses because Gobert can't make defenders pay inside. His team doesn't let him try. And 5-out offenses with shooters can spread them so thin that they just can't get stops. It's the same old story for the Jazz, except this time what comes next could have ripple effects felt across the entire NBA. Multiple times this season, I was arguing why the Jazz need to add versatile defenders to their roster or else they'd fail again. We even made a video about it earlier in the year. Jeremy Grant from Detroit is a guy that I love for their team because of the versatile defense he would have added. Plus, he can score. But whether it was Grant or another player, maybe it's actually a good thing the Jazz didn't make any short-term decisions, because not doing anything has made it obvious that this team is in need of major change. Which brings me to Danny Ainge, the CEO of basketball operations, an alternate governor for the Utah Jazz. That's a fancy way of saying Ainge has a ton of power. Last year, though, people on NBA Twitter started jokingly calling Ainge by the nickname of Almost Ainge because of all the players he almost got, like James Harden, Paul George, Kevin Durant. You could even say Justice Winslow, who Ainge was infatuated with in that draft. He offered at least 4 first-round picks to trade for Winslow on draft night, but sometimes the best moves you make are the ones you don't. Sometimes you go for it and you swing and miss. Back in 2003, I was a 13-year-old Celtics fan when Danny Ainge was in his first few months in the job running Boston. Just 10 days before the regular season. I'll never forget it. I'm always going to remember my dad calling me into the room. He was watching TV because the Celtics had traded Antoine Walker. I remember seeing the names on the TV. I remember the shock that I felt, but I was happy because Antoine took way too many threes. They didn't play enough defense. I was sick and tired of him. But trading Walker was Ainge's first of many massive moves during his 18-year tenure as Celtics president of basketball operations. Al Jefferson for Kevin Garnett. Kendrick Perkins for Jeff Green, KG and Paul Pierce to Brooklyn for picks, taking Jaylen Brown instead of trading for Jimmy Butler, moving down from the first to the third pick, effectively flipping Markelle Fultz for Jason Tatum, Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving. How about that? The Celtics just don't care what you think about the decisions that they make. That's why they've been able to make them so many times. The Celtics just don't care what you think of the choices they make. That's why they've been largely successful ever since Whit Grousbeck bought the team and ever since Ainge started running it. Not every decision worked for Ainge, but I'd say most of those big ones I listed did. Sometimes they almost made a move, but at least the Celtics were taking swings with the only goal being to win championships. The organization's goal is to win, so feel free to keep taking shots at people who go for it or try to be like them and see how that mindset feels. It might be healthy. I like what the Celtics did for years under Ainge. They took risks. That's what the best teams do. And with the Jazz now, at least now the Jazz are trying, because I guarantee you Ainge didn't sign up for this job expecting to have Gobert, Mitchell, and Snyder for the next 7 years. Ainge will flip this over many times if he needs to, and he wouldn't have taken this Jerry West style role in Utah without at least believing in Ryan Smith as the Jazz owner. Ainge and Smith have been friends for 20 plus years. Smith said at Ainge's press conference in December that he wants a collaborative environment for decisions, but Ainge is going to be the guy with a big voice. He's going to help him get it right. That's the words he used. We want Ainge because he's going to increase our chances of getting it right. We're already hearing about potential for change because Mark Stein reported on his Substack that Snyder's future is in doubt after 8 seasons with the organization. So, okay, Snyder, a new voice might help. A new voice could be needed here, but the roster is what really requires changes more than anything else. So changing from Snyder's nice and all, but the Jazz added Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside last year, and all they did during the season was lose Joe Ingles, who of course tore his ACL and got dealt to the Blazers. There are plenty of great arguments to keep Mitchell and Gobert together long-term. Those guys are both all-stars. They're great, but let's pretend for a second Ainge splits up Mitchell and Gobert. Who do you think he would rather keep? Comment below and let me know why. I want to know what you think. My initial thought is maybe he'd rather keep Mitchell because Danny Ainge has a long history. He's had a thing for guards like Mitchell, spark plug scorers who can thrive in the pick and roll. Think about Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving, Eddie House, Marcus Banks, Nate Robinson. Go back to his early days with the Celtics. All of these guards have different degrees of talent, obviously, when I'm putting Nate Robinson and Kyrie Irving in the same sentence, but they're all in the same mold. They all just bring buckets to the floor. And the Celtics always had guys like that on most editions of those Boston rosters. Mitchell's on the high end of that spectrum with room to improve at only age 25. Plus, he's entering only the second year of a 4-year max contract with a player option for the 5th season. So unless Mitchell indicates that he wants to bounce or if he demands a trade, Ainge has time to make it work with one of the league's better young scorers. And I'd be surprised if Gobert was Ainge's preference, given his history the past 10-ish years, acquiring bigs who can shoot threes, whether it's Olynyk or Tice or Horford. The only guy he acquired that didn't was Robert Williams, who was and is a favorite of Brad Stevens. So I can see Ainge wanting to make it work with Gobert, though, because after all, like, if you're moving Rudy Gobert, what are you going to do about your defense? It would be incredibly difficult to reconstruct the defense that can compete, especially in one summer. But maybe you get defense back in the trade. Maybe you trade Gobert to the Nets for Ben Simmons, Nick Claxton, draft picks. I'm not kidding. Who says Brooklyn wants to keep Simmons? Why wouldn't the Nets want Gobert with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant? People would be talking about Gobert like he's a megastar playing with those guys with their ability to create offense. It wouldn't be a concern if Gobert can't create his own when he's playing with KD and Kyrie. And then on defense, you can switch because KD is an excellent backline defender. They have other guys on this team like Bruce Brown that are great defenders. If something like that were to happen in the offseason, I like it for the Nets. And for the Jazz, it would just change things up in a dramatic way. I'm not sure if that's the best deal. But wouldn't Mitchell and Simmons on paper, despite the fact that, rookie of the year race and everything like that, but on paper, That's a great combination. And that's just one idea. The market would be strong for Gobert. Teams that also wanted Miles Turner, such as Charlotte or Dallas, would want Gobert. ESPN's Tim McMahon said the Mavs straight up covet Gobert if he's available. And by the way, Luka and Gobert, that's a perfect match with Luka's godly playmaking and Gobert's finishing. Or what about the Raptors? Imagine Gobert surrounded by all of Toronto's length and then Fred VanVleet in the backcourt. I'd love to see how something like that could work out. And then a team that wants to get good all of a sudden could also want Gobert. So the Jazz can reshape what the roster looks like around Mitchell if that's what they really want to do. I don't know though, because what if the guy who has more value in Mitchell, what if a team won the lottery and then offered the first pick? What if they offered the second pick or the third pick? Either way, if it's the first pick as a headlining piece in a trade for Mitchell, maybe there's a young player in the draft that Ainge loves who he feels can better fit around Gobert and Conley and the other guys in the squad. Maybe as part of the trade, there's some good wing defenders that come back, such as the Knicks. What if the Knicks end up moving up into the top 4 and they offer a top 4 pick, Reddish and Grimes, and maybe some other goodies in there? If the Knicks move up and then offer something like that, I gotta think the Jazz listen, because I wonder what Jabari Smith from Auburn, a 6'10 shooter, versatile defender, he goes crazy on defense. What does Jabari Smith look like on defense next to Gobert in a front court with Conley? Maybe Conley's getting more usage even though he's older. Look, if you trade Mitchell, the Jazz can find another guard if they need to. I mean, if they need to. This year, next year, doesn't matter when. There are always guards in the draft, always good guards available in free agency. It's the most abundant position in the NBA. So while I would bet Ainge's preference in a vacuum is to keep Mitchell based on his history, also consider this. Mitchell isn't untouchable. As Ainge himself has said on multiple occasions in the past, nobody is ever untouchable. He said it many, many, many times. Believe him. Gobert, as good as he is, Mitchell, as good as he is, they're not at like the hang up the phone and block your number level of a player. So maybe the Jazz will listen. Maybe the roster stays the same, because maybe you can do worse than Gobert and Mitchell. I don't know. I'd look into breaking them up. Unless things suddenly change the rest of the season, unless they're able to make a deeper run than ever before, I wouldn't bet on this core looking the same next season if Ainge actually has the power. And we'll see how the power dynamics develop in Utah. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen there. Not everything is clear yet, but if the Jazz do what they think is best, no matter the public perception, no matter how dramatic of a move that it might be, I look forward to seeing what's up next, because not all big moves work out, but the Jazz are finally going to be taking some big swings. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the Utah Jazz, what they should do. Do you want to trade Mitchell or Gobert or neither? Is a player that you want them to target? How are you feeling as well about the Jazz? Like, this team has had so much great regular season success for years, and now they're in this position where they're stumbling here. Just let me know how you're feeling if you're a Jazz fan. And if you're not a Jazz fan, let me know what you think they should do based off your experiences rooting for your team and your favorite players, because they're in a tough spot here, man. Gobert and Mitchell are really good. Conley's good. Bogdanovich is good. We didn't even talk about him. Royce O'Neal's a solid player. They have a lot of good players on that roster, but it just doesn't work. I'd look into trading Mitchell or Gobert. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to The Ringer. It really does help out the channel, and you get all of your videos in your feed every single week. Thank you again. Have a fun day.